Sean Cole for SRT, and I gotta tell you, I feel real lucky. We got ourselves a copy of the Frex force feedback sim wheel, and it's quite a piece of work. I'm gonna go ahead and turn a few laps, and while I do, I'll get you caught up on how we got it to this point. The box had to weigh 10 or 15 pounds, and inside were some high-tech looking boxes. Pulling out the boxes and opening them, we discovered the main body of the Frex wheel, and then about 1 million extra parts. The main unit is pre-assembled, and what lies under the cover is truly amazing. In addition, there is a power box, and a brain for the wheel, and a lot of cables, and then a ton of other parts, implying that it will be quite some time till we are driving this sucker. All of these extra parts will eventually form the paddle shifters and the wheel adapter. Everything we have here came in at a hair over $2,000 plus shipping from Japan. That's a whole lot of yen. At about this time, I started to marvel at the design of the wheel. I don't even have the words to describe the way it works. This looks far more like a transformer or a robot than a sim wheel. I can tell you right now that it will take most people quite a while to figure this all out, put it together, and actually get it mounted. This wheel generates tremendous amounts of force and will need to be bolted to something substantial. In my case, by pure coincidence, part of my sim pod is built with profile tubing, and that is the recommended way to mount the wheel. It took about an hour to mount the wheel without shifters and get it in the running position good enough to feel out. Comes with all the drivers right here on this little USB chip. You just plug it in, it's got all the instructions on PDF files, and you got the drivers that load automatically with the full immersion technology that you need to run the force feedback. The wheel is auto-calibrating, and once recognized will take no extra work. The settings for the wheel in Windows are no different from most force feedback wheels, the most critical being force feedback strength. We, as recommended, started with 25%. Starting things off in R factor, it would only take a few seconds to come to the conclusion that this wheel is very smooth in its rotation. This is the first force feedback wheel that I would even put in the category of smooth wheels. There is no notchy feeling, no gear sound or feel. The other thing I noticed is that this wheel is not negative force feedback, and was set up for 900 degrees of rotation, nearly its maximum of 1080. This made for some very crazy R factor driving. Next up, I wanted to try the new feel of iRacing since I had the wheel set up for massive rotation. That led to my next problem, caused purely by my own impatience, and that is no shifters, and iRacing has no auto shift. So borrowing a lending hand, I got to feel the Frex wheel in all of its glory with iRacing and its fantastic force feedback. The force feedback is immediate and strong, and yet still allows you to react to the wheel. A combination of great force feedback and smooth motion made this wheel literally a dream. At first there was a little bit of wobble or vibration in the wheel on straightaways, but then I used settings similar to my G25 in Windows and got rid of the wobble. The Frex wheel uses immersion technology for force feedback just like a G25, so the amount of effect felt in sims are the same, but the manner that it is delivered is very different. The wheel is far more prepared to deal with the force you throw at it, counter-steering and making quick reactions on the wheel than a G25. In order to test other sims properly, I needed to adjust the rotation of my wheel down to my favorite for most sims, and that's 340. To do this, you will adjust the movement stops until they prevent the wheel from turning. The wheel is auto-calibrating, so you can have it move through any portion of its overall movement, and it will find its own center. Not an easy task, but not an impossible one either. Since we are working on the wheels, let's add the shifters and the wheel adapter plate. Well, if you remember all those extra parts, after a bit of time, about an hour, I had them all put together in the form of paddle shifters. The shifters, like the rest of the wheel, look very industrial meets robotics. The shifters are heavy duty and seem like they will take daily abuse with no problem at all. When shifting, the shifters have a very positive click and return fast enough to prevent double shifting. This assembly also includes 6 buttons with removable colored tops and the powered up light letting you know the wheel is active. Now we are set up for some serious racing. Next on the agenda would be the Historics mod for R Factor, where I have Real Feel enabled. The Frex wheel came to life with incredible results. The Real Feel settings were a nice improvement, and with 340 degrees of rotation, R Factor also felt great. Live for Speed has always been a great sim for force feedback, and the Frex performed well there too. Sim after sim, the Frex wheel performed excellent after getting it dialed in. The biggest and most noticeable difference between the Frex and all other force feedback wheels is this. The Frex is smoother, the Frex is faster, the Frex is quieter, and the Frex is stronger. It is also very adjustable, so you can have any rotation from 1080 down to any desired. You can have force feedback so strong that it hurts, or tune it all the way down and still have the same strength backing the lighter settings in response to your fast input. Well, I talked about how smooth and how silent this thing is, so what I really want to do is turn down my speakers. I have it completely on mute now. I'm still driving the track, but you're going to be able to hear just how quiet this thing is. And you can see the motor turning there. Whenever it's moving, that's me moving the wheel right now, going around a corner, getting a little loose there, actually getting around a corner. A little downshifting for a slow one. And I mean, there's little noise. The vibration you're hearing is actually my desk. This thing puts out a lot of power, so a lot of what you're hearing is just my desk rattling. But there I am going full back and forth on the wheel, and it's just barely making any noise, and it's just as smooth as can be. With categories like cost, installation, and pedal rating, it would be completely unfair to put the Frex sim wheel on our judging scale. So for this wheel, I will tell you what I feel are the positives and the negatives, and with that, if you can afford one, you can decide if it's for you. Starting out with the negatives, the number one factor is price. At $2,000 plus, this thing is way out of most people's ranges. The other thing is it is a very complicated piece of hardware, and those not good at assembly might even find the wheel frustrating. Over 2 hours to prep the wheel, and I was prepared to do so, but for most it could take a few days to even turn a lap. Despite being the coolest wheel I have ever seen, the covering is minimalistic and wouldn't even keep out dust. At $2,000, I would expect more finishing touches to complete the wheel. And then the finished and assembled shifter paddles have exposed wires with cheap plastic clips in plain sight. Not very classy. Having to manually change the lock of the wheel and to need tools to do so makes driving different sims hard to do and time consuming. I would hate to not drive a sim one day because I was too lazy to get tools and make adjustments. And if adjusted to the full limits, the bars aren't strong enough to stop the wheel. You will need to make a bridge or something to strengthen this area for durability. Frex also has nearly impossible to deal with website. This means when ordering a wheel with $2,000 of your hard-earned money, it will be confusing, and Frex has very little support on their site for wheel owners. The positives list is shorter and simpler. This is the most innovative wheel design that I have ever seen. For me, it is so cool to look at that I wouldn't even put the cover on. I would just keep it sparkling clean. The wheel is robust, and when mounted properly will have absolutely no wiggle or flex at all. The wheel is brutally strong. I like the idea of being able to turn it up as high as I would never want it, even though I would never use it that way. The wheel is so smooth when turning, with very, very minimal friction as well. This seems to really enhance the force feedback. On commercial force feedback wheels, sometimes the noise will distract me. This thought will never occur with the Frex wheel. I also like the way the drivers and all manuals come on a memory chip and are very handy when needed. And then the force feedback. Between the power, the smoothness, and the lack of flex, there is no delay in giving you force feedback. There is no gear lash felt and no noise to take away from the effects. This is the best force feedback I have ever used, and despite not coming with pedals, it is set up to have them added on. The wiring and brain for the Frex will accept up to 16 more buttons and 3 different potentiometers. At the end of everything, I would love to see this wheel come down in price. I would also like to see Frex put more energy into the finish now that the design is so far along. And if it's going to cost me $2,000, then I don't want to have to put shifters together or make modifications to limit rotation. And for those of you driving a G25 and wondering if this wheel will make you better, the answer is yes, but just slightly. For $2,000, you are getting the finest wheel I could get my hands on, but it's not going to take seconds off your lap times. Maybe only a tenth, in fact. However, your enjoyment will be higher and the feelings more realistic. Way to go, Frex, with a very fine wheel. I'd like to see some improvements over time, but a great first entry. To check out the Frex wheel for yourself, go to www.frex.com/GP and you can see this wheel and all of their other high-end products.